Major General Cardozo, welcome to the Access India Convention. Thank you for being our guest of honor.
Thank you for inviting me to be the guest of honor, Kanchan.
Sir, you have a long history. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and the 1971 war.
Kanchan, it's not a short question, or it may be a short question, but it has a very long answer. I'll try and cut it short. I lost a leg in the 1971 war in East Pakistan, and at that time the army headquarters had a policy which stated that no person with disability can command troops. Now that is the only life I knew. I had joined the Gurkhas. I had become part and parcel of their families. I had been to Nepal. I had stayed with them. And there is no other life that I knew. And I wanted to go back. But I had no idea as to how I would convince the army headquarters that I was as good as people who are non-disabled. However, I decided I will take each day as it comes, and I will make every challenge into an opportunity, and that's what happened. From World War II to 1971, only 2 officers were promoted to brigadier's rank, that too on the staff. And I said, what is the problem? I was categorized as low medical category because they felt I could not march, I could not run, I could not swim, I could not climb. And I decided I would take these 4 issues and prove to them that I was as good as anybody else in these 4 areas. As far as swimming is concerned, I am very good at swimming, so that was not a problem. As far as marching was concerned, I was practicing 6 to 7 kilometers every day for a time when a test would come, not knowing when that test would happen. But I ran so much that one day metal fatigue set in, and the bolt which secured the foot with the rest of the leg snapped and broke, and I fell on the ground. Luckily, the army gives you a reserve leg. I got a reserve leg, and I kept on running. Finally, I rescued a boy from drowning, which proved that I was not as good as anybody else. I was better than others because there was nobody else who had the guts to jump into the sea to save him. And I did my physical proficiency test. I left 7 officers behind in the 2-mile run. And then I was posted on the staff to military operations in army headquarters. And part of my job was to go as a staff officer to the vice chief of the chief. And I went with the vice chief to Kashmir. And whereas the vice chief and the formation commander went in a helicopter, I was down on the ground with vehicles. And I decided, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I reached a particular post, and I was told a friend of mine was commanding. So without giving it a thought, I climbed 2,800 feet to have breakfast with my friend. And when the vice chief landed in the helicopter, he said, "How have you come here?" So I said, "I can climb." "I climbed, sir." He said, "You can climb?" So I said, "Sir, what I cannot do lies in the minds of my senior officers." So he said, "What do you mean?" So I said, "Sir, I have not been given the opportunity to prove what I can do, or person with disability what they can do. And therefore, you need to reconsider." So he reconsidered and spoke to the chief. And he said, "Sir, he can run, he can march, and he can climb. So what is the problem?" The chief said, "Send him with me to Ladakh, I'm going there next week." I went with the chief to Ladakh. He saw me operating in high altitude area, and he came back, asked for my file and said, "Yes, give him a battalion and all other war wounded officers who are not taking shelter of their wounds." This changed the whole policy. To change the policy of army headquarters, which is hierarchical, was a great thing that I did. I'm not boasting, but I am proud of the fact that I was able to change the policy of a very, very rigid and hierarchical setup. And 3 people who had lost legs, one of them had lost both legs, became army commanders, that is one rank below the chief. And we are hoping, all of us who are disabled, that one day we'll have a chief who is disabled. Yes.
After your army career, you went on to become the chairman of RCI. I remember one day you told me the Prime Minister called and you responded immediately. Tell us about RCI and tell us about what you thought you could do more there.
I'll take you a little further in time just to explain to you about the bias and prejudice that people have for persons who are disabled. When I was told that I would not command troops, I decided that I should get educated. The NDA at that time, the only qualification I had was inter, which is neither here nor there. So I decided to go back to school, and while I was doing my job, I went for night classes, went back to school, got a diploma in personal management, got a degree in commerce, got a degree in management, got a degree in military history. So I was a double MA, and I thought now I could land a job if required. After I retired, I went to many corporate sector offices, and they were very polite, but no one called me. Did they not call me because I was too senior and not trainable, or was it because I was disabled? I do not know, but I never got a job. I finally worked with children with disability, and I knew I found my correct place. I was very happy to work with them. I worked for them for 5 years, and then I got a call, not from the Prime Minister, from the PS to the Prime Minister, who said, the Prime Minister wants to know whether you will accept the job of chairman of RCI. So he said, so I said, why me? There are people who are more qualified than I am. And he said, no, the Prime Minister wants a yes or no answer. So I said, I have to speak to my minister. So he said, who's that? I said, my wife. So he had a laugh and said, okay, come back to me tomorrow. So I said, yes. Now as a Fauji means an army officer, I never ever discussed money. So I never asked them what my salary would be. Whereas there were 3 institutions working with the government. One was the RCI, the Rehabilitation Council of India, one was National Trust, and one was Chairman of Persons with Disability. All of us were equated to Secretary Government of India, which is the highest bureaucratic post in the government. The other 2 were given a salary. I did not know that the RCI chairman was not paid. I never asked. I signed the dotted line, and then I was told there is no salary. But I said to them, I'm an army officer, my word is good enough, I don't have to sign any papers. And I worked for them for 3 years. In the meantime, I was offered a job with Helpage, but I said, I've given my word here, so I gave somebody else's name. I worked for 9 years with the Government of India as chairman of RCI, and I got no pay whatsoever. Not even sitting fees for chairing meetings. But that's all right. I wanted to leave, but person with disability told me, sir, please stay because we are relying on you. I think I was able to do 2 things in the RCI which I am proud of. One is that I was not satisfied with the caliber and the qualification of professionals, and I said we need to have an examination, all India, to make sure that these people who are inducted as professionals are really qualified. I don't know whether that has been followed, but this is what I managed to convince the government to do. And the second is that I believe in inclusive education. And that means all children need to be taught by all teachers in all schools. And for that, it was necessary that a teacher should be able to teach children with disability and children who are not disabled. And for that, we need to have a bachelor's degree so that these teachers are qualified accordingly. That too, I was able to introduce and I hope that it is being implemented. So this is what my tenure was in the RCI. The RCI basically ensures that, gives guidelines and ensures the standards are met to ensure that people who work in the disability sector are properly qualified and follow the right practices. So that is what I did as chairman of RCI. I found that I also know that India is a very spiritual country, and there were many organizations and NGOs who did a great job because they also believe in God, and I do believe that one needs to understand that belief in the Creator is important to get the right values in this sort of work.
So, Major General, over the years, you've seen a transformation in the disability sector. There has been some consolidation. There is more to go still, and lots for us to achieve. What do you think of the transformation over the last few years?
See, there is a saying that if a glass is half full, it is also quite clear that the glass is also half empty. A lot has happened, and a lot has happened because we had what was known as the Disability Rights Group, headed by a person called Javed Abidi. Javed Abidi was a fantastic human being who had, if he was in the army, he would have been a great general. He had a wonderful strategy. He was a tactician. He knew exactly what had to be done to make the government do what it was supposed to do. And whatever has happened, I'm not saying that the Disability Rights Group was the only organization. There were many others, like Mr. Romta and others also, who have done a lot to transform the whole situation of what it was and what it is. The point is now is what will it be in the future? As we are saying, transformation and consolidation. The issue is that although a lot has been done, the Disability Act of 1995, the Disability Act of 2016, access to all buildings, awareness raising, and all this has happened because we in the disability sector worked on a strategy which we call a strategy of limited response, graduated response. And that meant, firstly, we used to tell the government and people who were in the decision-making area that awareness raising. We made them aware of what were the rights of persons with disability and what needed to be done. If that didn't work, then we went to advocacy. And advocacy meant that we needed to have discussions, seminars, and we called people in the government to attend and tried to convince them of what needed to be done. And if that didn't work also, we went on the streets of Delhi in what is called activism. These three issues, these three modalities helped to change the face of disability in India. But as Kanchan has just said, if the glass is half full, it is also half empty. There is a lot more to be done, and that can only happen provided the government listens to what we have to say. Now, I also belong to an organization called the NCPEDP, where Javed was, he was heading as a director. And after some time, I felt that we had left the government off the hook, and we needed to push them further. And Javed said, "Sir, the government is listening to what we are saying. They are more amenable to what our views are. So let us work through cooperation." And for some time it worked. But now I have my doubts as to whether we need to only go with cooperation. If the government does not look at cooperation as a method of moving forward, then what should we do next? I leave it to you to decide. I've told you what the strategy was earlier. Should we follow that earlier strategy, or do you think the government will listen to what we are saying? We need to move forward. Take a simple issue of census. Whereas we had earlier only 7 disabilities, we now have 21. And obviously, if the census is done correctly, we will know that the number of disabled people in India is somewhere around 8 million. Am I right? Or how much is it? About 8 million? Whereas the census pegs us down to about 2.5 million, which is not correct. So the point is this: if the government feels that votes are important, they should understand that the people with disability can also vote. And we will vote provided we are treated fairly. And we need the government to understand that we are people to contend with. We are people who can do things. We should not be on the sidelines of society. We should be included in every human endeavor, and we can help the country to move forward.
So, Major, what do you think about the transformation that has taken place over the last, right from 71, when you joined the Persons with Disability, from then onwards to now? It's been 50 years, and what do you think has happened since then?
Kanchan, a lot has happened. A lot has happened not because the people of India, society, the community feels concerned about the issue of disability or concerned about persons with disability. No, it is not that. It has happened because persons with disability and their parents have gone on record to protest the way they are being looked at, the way they are being treated, and they have pushed governments, not only in India, all over the world, to do what they are supposed to do to ensure that persons with disability have a rightful place in the world. But as I said earlier, if the glass is half full, it is also half empty. And the reason for that is, I think we need to have a vision. We need to think about what will be the fate of persons with disability or the disability sector 10 years from now. So, what does that involve? A vision. Firstly, we have to be quite clear as to where would persons with disability and the disability sector figure in India 10 years from now. And for that, we need to have a strategy. And once we have a strategy, then we've got to have an infrastructure. The infrastructure needs money. And that money has to come from the government. It can't be manufactured from thin air. So, the government has to understand that people with disability can contribute to the development of India and not be mere passengers, and therefore they should be able to understand that we need to be funded. Now, in every financial planning, whatever it is called, the disability is ignored. Please do consider that we are an important factor to ensure development of India. So, first you've got to have a vision, second you've got to have a strategy, third you've got to have an infrastructure, and then, whereas vision is for the next 10, 15, 20 years, you need to think about next year. So the next year we should have an aim. So every year we need to think about what we should do for the next year, and we should have objectives. And we're going to have objectives. We're also going to have, once the objectives have been finalized, we need to have policies to ensure that they are implemented, and procedures. So, vision, strategy, infrastructure, aims, objectives, policies, procedures, activities. This is how I feel, in my personal view, we need to move forward.
What is your vision for the next 10 years?
The vision for the next 10 years is that persons with disability should be part of every human endeavor, in the corporate sector, in the armed forces. Now, the armed forces, I accept, needs people with fit people, who are fit. But who will fight in the next war if they know that persons with disability are not cared for? So those who are disabled in war need to be allowed to contribute to the armed forces in whatever way they can. This has already happened. which is a good thing. And I'm saying this because I'm very proud to be an army officer. I'm very proud to belong to the Indian Army. If the Indian Army can change its perception, listen to what people are saying, and change their policy, what about the rest of India? What about the rest of the world? What about the government? They should also take a lesson from the Indian Army and do whatever they can to make sure that the productivity of persons with disability can contribute to the future of India.
So your vision is in place. What about a strategy for it?
Well, this needs to be worked out. And a strategy involves, firstly, there are three questions in the army which we ask. What is your task? What does it involve? How far can I plan now? So we need to take into consideration what are the obstacles to progress as far as persons with disability are concerned. We need to put them down and then work out how those obstacles can be removed. Then we got to understand, once we decide that this is what we need to do, we need to have options. Option A, option B, option C. Then analyze each option. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each option? And come to a conclusion, which is the best option, and then decide and make a plan. And that is the plan which will make things work.
In conclusion, I'd like you to tell us, what do you think we, the younger generation, should be thinking of now, and how can we do better than what we have done already?
That's a very difficult question to answer, Kanchan, because I am now 86, going on 86. But I do feel that India is on the move. India is dynamic. The younger generation is passionate, it's energetic, it's full of dreams, and those dreams can be met. Those dreams should not remain dreams as dreams which you have at night. They should be dreams which should be implemented. And therefore the most important thing in my opinion is that we should dream and dream big, but we should also understand that those dreams have to be implemented, otherwise it is of no use. India is on the move. In fact, there are many things which are happening in India, and I congratulate the government on that. Take for instance access at airports today. Access at airports today is better in India than many parts of the world. And I think we can be an example to the rest of the world in many areas. But we should understand that India can lead. India can lead the world in the issue of disability, provided we dream big and understand that we can do, it is doable, provided we have the energy and the will to implement it. As Sam Manekshaw used to say, do what you love. Love what you do. Do not be afraid and never give up. So do what you love means that we who are working in the disability sector need to be proud of what we are doing and do whatever we can to make the world a better place for persons with disability. Love what we do means that we need to be the best. We need to work hard, we need to have energy, we need to think, and we need to apply our thoughts to make things work. There will be many challenges, there will be many obstacles, but as Sam said, do not be afraid, bite the bullet, and you will be able to succeed. And lastly, never give up. So that is the message I would like to pass to all of you in Goa. But I am a Goan, I am very proud to be a Goan, I am very proud to be disabled. I was asked once by a reporter, he said, thinking back, would you join the army once again, knowing what happened to you? I said, without a doubt, yes. Because the army and disability have a common factor, and that common factor is love. Now you might say that, what does an army officer know about love? It is love for the country, love for the people with disability, love for the people of India, love for what we do, love for the way of life that makes us do what we do and put our lives in the line of fire and disappear in the smoke and fire of battle. So, I think the most important word in the army, if it is love, it is the most important word in the disability sector, not only for persons who are disabled, but those decision makers who are working in the area of disability. They need to love what they do and make sure that their dreams are converted to a reality.
So, Major General, what do you think of the way forward? How do you think we should go ahead?
I happen to be a Goan. My village is Kandoli. And in Konkani, that is our language, we have a word called Susegar. And I think Susegar has entered into the minds of the disability sector. We have become laid back and complacent. If the glass is half full, it is also half empty. And are we content to let that glass remain half empty? By all means, we should not. And therefore, we should not have Susegar as a means of moving forward. Therefore, we need to dream big and manage to implement those dreams. Secondly, we should be concerned about numbers. Unless we get the numbers correct at the census, we will not be able to get the right financing or budgeting for persons with disability. Thirdly, we need to talk about inclusion. Persons with disability should be included in every human endeavor, in every walk of life. Then, education. This can only happen if education is inclusive. It is no use having children with disabilities studying separately. They need to be part of the social mainstream so that people who are non-disabled also understand disability better. And when they come into positions of decision making, they can take the right decisions. Then, with regard to health and poverty, most persons with disability are also poor. Therefore, unless they are educated properly, they will not be able to get good jobs. If they get good jobs, then they will be self-sufficient. So all these issues need to be taken on board to ensure that persons who are disabled have a better life, and this is something we should think about. Susegar is not the answer. Thank you.
So then, what does Susegar actually mean, and how should we not get involved and get messed up by it?
Susegar actually means laid back. The habit of postponing decision making. You need not do it today, you can do it tomorrow, you can do it the day after, you can do it whenever. So, that is the way of Goa. Goa is chilled out. But Goans, the world over, are very, very dynamic. They are in positions of power in many countries in the world. We've got prime ministers in Ireland, Northern Ireland, in Portugal, and I don't know where else, but Goans can go great guns, provided they are given the opportunity to do something great. But Susegar is not the answer.
Susegar is not the answer for the entire audience
Yes.
as well.
So please, all of you who are listening, please get your act together and don't be complacent, don't be laid back, make the government do what they're supposed to do. Thank you.
And do what you have to do also.
Do what you have to do also, yes.
Okay, thank you. See, now we ask for reasonable accommodation. Okay? Now, how do you balance that with the fact that you walked when it was so difficult to walk and didn't ask for a jeep? You know?
The issue is when a person who is disabled takes on the world and says that persons with disability must be given the opportunity to prove what they can do, then you have to face up to the challenge. If I have been saying all this time that I am as good as a person who is non-disabled, then I must prove the point. And the most important characteristic in the army is personal example. That's what leadership is all about. I was told by the government that I was not to get a salary. I told them one thing. I said, okay, I will work, but I do not want any interference from you. The day you interfere with me, my resignation will be on the table the next morning. So leave me alone to do what I have to do. I must say this much, the government, respecting my wishes, I never interfere.